Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. It is Tuesday. It is 3 p.m. ET, a special time for Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. And we are so thrilled that you have joined us here today. We're here at a special time because we have a very special book, This Cursed House by Del Sandeen, and we will hear more about that in a minute. So don't you move. You must hear about this truly amazing book. I'm your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 15 going on 16 novels of suspense. My current book is One Wrong Word, which is now also out in gorgeous trade paperback, and I hope you will look for that. My new book, All This Could Be Yours, comes out this time next year, and we'll talk about it then. But today we are not talking about me. We are talking about This Cursed House by Del Sandeen, and we had the absolute joy of welcoming her here today from Jacksonville, where she was safe. I have to tell you very quickly, you all, and then I know I'll let Del talk. This is such a powerful novel with, yes, it's Southern Gothic horror. Yes, it is all the things that you come to expect from that and love from that. And we'll talk about that for a minute. But horror in this book, to me at least, is such a massive metaphor for how human beings treat each other and how they have treated each other. And what does a curse really mean? And how does that get lifted? This is not an ordinary novel. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to have Del here today to talk with us a little bit about the story and the story behind the story, and even the story behind the story behind the story, which is all there. Del, welcome, welcome, welcome. And it's your debut. This book is getting absolute raves across the board. What do you think when you see the adulation for this, and how does it feel to have a debut novel?
First of all, thank you so much for having me, Hank. I'm so excited to be here. I was going to say, this journey has been incredible. It's very exciting to finally have this book out in the world, and the positive reviews that have come in from people. I mean, some people have messaged me, directly or privately, and some have, obviously posted on social media, and it's just really been amazing. And I love the fact that a lot of people seem to get it. Like I said, this is a Southern Gothic horror, but it is about, many other things. It's also a story about family, and acceptance. And, as you said, it's, there are other things going on, besides just the scary bits. So.
Yes. Although the scary bits are really scary. Are you a fan of horror movies and the horror genre?
I have long been a fan of horror. I will say, I think part of the reason that I ended up where I ended up is because when I was younger, my family lived in Central Florida, and there was this show that came on every Saturday afternoon called Creature Feature. It's kind of like Svengoolie. So it was kind of campy and silly, and they showed a scary movie every week. A lot of horror Hammer films with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, a lot of Vincent Price. So I was watching a lot of these older horror movies, and that was what my dad and I did every Saturday afternoon. And sometimes, like my mom, she would usually be working or doing other things. And sometimes I was wondering, well, because I was pretty young, like 6, 7, 8, when my dad and I first started watching the show. And so I was like, where was my mom while me and my dad were watching all these Vincent Price films? But it was fun. And
I was totally young. I saw The Incredible Shrinking Man in my formative years, and I think about that all the time. Do you know Tess Gerritsen? I'll have to introduce you to Tess Gerritsen if you don't know her. Her mother used to take them to horror movies when they were kids.
Oh, wow.
And she would say, well, my mom, and now when Tess showed her mother her books, her mother would always say, this is good, Tess, but it could be scarier. So,
oh, wow.
Another parent-child bonding. We'll get more to horror in a moment, but I want to welcome all of you. First of all, let me say that Del is giving away a copy of This Cursed House to one lucky commenter and one lucky questioner. Oh, good, hold that up. We want people to see. Look at that evocative cover. That is quite amazing with the lights on inside. I love that so much. So leave a question or leave a comment, and at the end we will spin the wheel of fun, and one of you will win a copy of this book. read it with the lights on, I am telling you. Although it will stay, it's very haunting. I mean, it's haunting in a different way. Anyway, if you are new to A Mighty Blaze, welcome, welcome, welcome. I see some of our Mighty Blaze veterans here. Renee is here, and Shannon Hansen, Kathy Hamdy Swink, Renee Erskowitz, and Mary Garrett says, think of the shrinking man when I go down into my basement. Don't even go there. Don't even go there. Shannon says, great cover. Susie Baldwin says, thank you, Del, for the chance to win your book. And Randy says, I think I'm going to buy the audio and physical book, says Randy. That is welcome to all of you. If you are new to A Mighty Blaze, you should know that the Blaze was started about 5 years ago at the beginning of the pandemic by the fabulous powerhouse team of Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt to keep us all talking about books and keep us reading and keep the bookish community together, and to, stay in touch with your favorite authors and maybe to meet some new ones. And I know that Del Sandeen will soon turn out to be one of your favorite authors as soon as we hear from her today. Let me tell you a little bit more about our author, and then I'll let her talk. You're like, Hank, let her talk. I will. Del Sandeen lives in Northeast Florida, where she works as a writer and copy editor. She also writes speculative fiction. Her work has appeared in FIYAH. I don't know that. Is that FIYA or FIYA?
It's FIYA. FIYA, that's correct.
Yes, Speculative Literary Magazine, Uncanny Magazine, Nightlight Podcast, and Gay Magazine. This Cursed House is her debut novel. It's so good. And she can be found on Twitter at Del Sandeen, cleverly enough. So, Del, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm finally going to let you talk. Tell us a little bit about what this book is about, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, sure. This Cursed House is a Southern Gothic horror. It is set in the early 1960s, and the protagonist, Gemma Barker, she moves from Chicago down south to New Orleans. She accepts a job offer from the Duchamp family. Gemma has reasons for wanting to leave Chicago, not least of which is she can see spirits. However, she does not view her ability to see spirits as a gift. She views it as more of a curse because her parents have always tried to get her to repress that ability. So the job offer from the Duchamps, it has great pay. She's looking for a fresh start. But as soon as she arrives, things aren't quite as fantastic as she was expecting. Gemma is Black. The Duchamp family is Black. But unlike Gemma, they are very light-skinned and white passing. And the Duchamps, instead of having her do the job that she thought she was hired for, she soon finds out that they need her to break a curse over their family.
Yeah, I hate when that happens. I mean, you bring us to her, you bring us on her initial journey to the Duchamp's house, so gorgeously on the train, and it gets hotter and hotter, which is such a metaphor too. And then people try to befriend her along the way. And every single person who comes in contact with her and hears where she's going says to her to stay away. One of the wonderful things that you do in this novel is you work on motivation. And why would she go on if people are telling her to stay away? Can you talk a little bit about that? What draws her to the house and what she thinks is drawing her to the house?
Yes. Gemma doesn't feel like she has a life back in Chicago anymore. She's had trouble with her job, a boyfriend. Her father has recently passed away. So she doesn't feel like she's leaving anything behind. She really wants a fresh start. The pay that the Duchamps are offering is very good for early 1960s. And she really, she just really wants a new beginning. Once she meets the Duchamps, she's really captivated by them. Physically, they're very beautiful people, and she's just entranced and charmed. And really, she wants and she needs, the whole situation in New Orleans to work out. So that is one of the main reasons, that she stays, despite the warnings that she's getting to not go there.
I mean, we enter the house with Gemma, and we see the inhabitants of the house. And it is not a spoiler in any way for you to tell us a little bit about, you started to tell us what they look like, but what the house is and how gorgeous the house is from the outside, but not when you get closer. Can you talk a little bit about how you developed that setting, how Southern and New Orleans it is, and sort of the feeling that you wanted us to have when we looked at it from far away and from close up and then from super close up.
Yes, I think the house, like the Duchamp family, at first glance, it's very pretty, it's very beautiful. But as you get closer and as you start examining it, much more closely, things are not quite as bright and shiny as they seem. New Orleans, I've been there a couple of times. I really love the city. It's very beautiful, but I think a lot of people who are familiar with it tend to agree it also feels like a very haunted place. And because I am from the South and I've grown up in the South, and I kind of have like a love-hate relationship with the South. It's like I love it because my family is here, my family has been here, but the history of the South is not as it's not as bright and shiny. And I think that's something that people who live here, it's something that we have to contend with and make peace with, if we can.
Yeah, make peace with if we can. And that is sort of what the book is about, the balancing of what peace means and what forgiveness means, and on what level, what plane that's even possible. I'm trying to figure, I'm sort of thinking, how much can we tell about this? We do know when, and I think, and I know it's not a spoiler, we do know that these beautiful Duchamps, when she walks in, there's something that is instantly off about them. Can you talk a little bit about what that is? We'll be careful.
Sure. Let me see. The curse that the Duchamps are under is a large part of the reason why they behave the way that they behave. Every single one of the family members, as Gemma encounters them and gets to know them better, she realizes that there are some things that are off about them. And I was going to say, without giving too much away.
I mean, for instance, she walks in her contemporary clothing, which is all wrong for New Orleans. And that is
Yes.
so marvelous that she's such an outsider. She's such a fish out of water. She's swimming upstream like crazy, but she's getting this money and she's getting to have a possible, she thinks she's going to be a tutor. So she thinks she's going to finally be able to teach the way she loves. We root for her and we love her, but she comes into this strange territory. And the people in the 60s they're not really dressed like people in the 60s. Are they just eccentric? Talk a little bit about what they look like.
Gemma realizes early on that she's dressed out of season and out of climate, but the Duchamps are dressed out of era. She notices right off that their clothing is very old-fashioned, and they're also using terms to refer to themselves that, by the early 1960s, African Americans were not using as much. And she realizes that it's almost like they are stuck in a certain time, stuck in place. And, she doesn't know why at first. She eventually finds all of this out. But yes, she can tell right from the start, the Duchamps are not exactly current with everything that's going on.
But she comes in, so there's a certain, maybe they're just eccentric, and maybe this is just how they are, and their clothes are beautiful. And I do love, one of the things about her is that she, you step a toe initially, she does, into propriety when they're using terms that she knows are incorrect and unloved at this point in the 60s. And she thinks, well, maybe I can just enlighten them a little bit about, how we deal with each other, in Chicago. Maybe it's a Southern thing. I'll just leave it there. Speaking of Southern thing, though, this is called a Southern Gothic. What does that mean to you? What is that a genre that has conventions? And if so, what are they, or did you make your own?
I will say I've always enjoyed Southern Gothic, and I stuck to pretty much tradition Southern Gothic. Back in the day, I think a lot of the Southern Gothic writers were white men like William Faulkner, Tennessee Williams, and then there were white women like Flannery O'Connor, Harper Lee. But in more recent years, there's been more, I guess, like authors of color and a lot more women who have tackled Southern Gothic. To me, what makes Southern Gothic Southern is primarily place and setting, it always has to take place in the South, whether it's Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, what's typically considered a Southern state. And the Gothic in Southern Gothic stems from the original Gothic, from Frankenstein, Dracula, Edgar Allan Poe. There's always a darkness there and a tension. And a lot of the times the characters are eccentric, strange, bizarre, and that, to me, those are hallmarks of Southern Gothic. There's always an element of the grotesque.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're talking about This Cursed House by Del Sandeen, and continuing talking about what Southern Gothic is. There's also always some unsettling history that a main character needs to discover. Some things that have happened in the past, some things that have changed, and also that, and I'm thinking about this now, also that everybody knows but everybody knows but them, and they're doing things that sort of come up against that for reasons, and they don't even understand why. Can you talk a little bit about that, the past as an obstacle in a Southern Gothic novel?
Sure. The past is very important. I think when people are not aware of the past or they don't appreciate it, as they say, they're definitely capable of making the same mistakes. In This Cursed House, the past has a big bearing on the story because the Duchons are cursed because of some things that have happened in their past. There's some generational trauma that's present. And until the people in the present are able to deal with, past happenings, they really are not able to move forward.
And they think that Gemma can help them. I mean, and also not only Southern Gothic. Tori T says this book sounds like a must read. Yes, indeed. You have got it, Tori T. This Cursed House by Del Sandeen. Also, we were talking about the creature feature. We had that too. I forget what it was. I think it was called Freeze Dried Movies, where I grew up in Indianapolis. It's interesting though, because it's not only Southern Gothic, but Southern Gothic horror. Mm-hmm. So when you add horror to it, what does that mean as a writer?
There's a lot of supernatural elements in the book. There's a lot of spirits. And I think with any, if anyone ever asks, like, what is a hallmark of horror? A hallmark is you're trying to scare someone. And, but it's not, in addition to the supernatural elements, I think a lot of the things that the Duchons do are horrible. And, I've often said, I don't know what's worse, the spirits in the story or the behavior of the Duchons, because they're both pretty bad.
Yes, and I want to talk about that much more deeply in a minute, because I think that's what makes this book incredibly special. I just want to read you what Booklist says. Sandeen's debut is an eerie and emotional journey into a family's haunted past. This novel will captivate fans of Gothic horror and those who enjoy richly atmospheric settings. And I'll go on about that, but in a minute too. But obviously, there's a curse in this cursed house, and you, Del, had to create a curse. How do you figure out? I mean, you don't have to say what it is, and don't, but the idea that you have to create one must have taken you to a really dark place, because it has to be awful. And it also has to have a reason. And it also has to have the possibility of being broken. How did you deal with the elements of that?
I was going to say, when I first decided what this book was going to be about, the first bit of an idea that came to me was I wanted to write about a cursed family. The parameters of the curse, those came soon after, and it wasn't really difficult to figure out how I wanted the family to be cursed. It was kind of difficult figuring out how I wanted the curse broken. That took a lot more, thinking and brainstorming. But I guess I wanted the curse to be like, it has to be serious enough, and dark enough where the family will do pretty much anything to have it broken. And that includes finding someone who they think, has the power to break it.
Which would mean that they are willing to risk putting that person in danger too, to help themselves, which is also sort of part of the horror. You referred to something that I'm fascinated by too, is you said, when I first got the idea for this, I wanted to write about a cursed family. Where did that idea come from? Do you have any, can you backtrack about why you decided on that? Why you even decided to write a book in the first place?
Honestly, this was one of the very few times where I didn't get an idea while I was busy doing something else. And I know sometimes that happens with writers. We'll be taking a walk or washing the dishes or playing with the dog, and an idea might pop up that way. This was one of the times where I had just finished a project, and I sat down and I just had to ask myself, well, what do I want to write next? And for whatever reason, Cursed Family popped up. I will say that some of the inspiration for the novel came from one of my absolute favorite films, Eve's Bayou, which is also set in the early 1960s in Louisiana. The family at the heart of that story is similar to the Duchons in that on the surface, they look perfect. But once you get closer and examine how they really are, there are a lot of secrets and a lot of tension and a lot of drama, simmering just underneath the surface.
And I love how the themes of your book simmer underneath the surface from the very beginning so gorgeously. As I was saying, the train ride and the buggy ride, and even the visit to the restaurant that she encounters along the way. And as we, the reader, go on the journey with her, the themes sort of seep up throughout the story until all is revealed. And I was so struck by the power of the metaphor in this cursed house, that the house could be all of us, and the curse could be on all of us. And who is it going to be that's going to understand it and break it? And can it ever be broken? And can there be redemption? I mean, can there be, maybe not, redemption? As you got deeper into the book, did those themes start building in your mind as well? And how was that to write?
Yes. Yeah, I was going to say, because when I started out, I think the idea was pretty straightforward. It's a cursed family. Like I said, I wasn't for sure how the curse was, what would have to happen for the curse to be broken. And it is a book very much about family and forgiveness and about acceptance. And yes, as I got deeper into the book, it was important to me that I fully explore those, because Gemma at the end, she needs to be a very different character than she is at the beginning. And a lot of her growth is tied into her relationship, with the Duchon family, and her ability to, instead of viewing her ability to see spirits as a curse, she needs to view it as the gift, that it actually is, because that is very crucial, to a lot of things that happen in the story, and a lot of the redemption, that eventually occurs.
Yeah, I mean, and you bring up such themes. Sue Street is saying, I would think that would be key. Is this family redeemable, to have this curse broken? And it's even bigger than that, Sue. I mean, you've got the point of it so well, so wisely, just from this wonderful discussion of this cursed house. But it'll start the dominoes in your mind falling about what Dell really may mean by this. I mean, you were talking about someone who craves acceptance. Is so important on so many levels. And you've said it in the 60s, and you wouldn't have had to, I don't think. Why did you decide to do that? I mean, it works so perfectly, but why did you decide to do that? Such a transitional time.
Yes. I wanted Gemma to have more obstacles, I think. The colorism, which is a huge part of the story, I can't even say that if the book were said today that the colorism wouldn't exist, because unfortunately it still does. But I did want Gemma to have some additional obstacles because, as is obvious, as she travels from the north down to the south, she has to contend with some things, riding in a car that is marked, colored, for Black passengers, and just certain places that she's not able to go in New Orleans. These are things that she didn't have to contend with up north. So yeah, it was like some external obstacles as well as some internal obstacles that she had to deal with.
Exactly. And that so many people are dealing with. I mean, the idea, the themes that there's this sort of, not sort of, but this heartbreaking hierarchy on every level, depending on the color of a person's skin, is just so front and center in this book. And you sort of, I mean, do you hope that people change the way they look at the world as a result of reading this?
Absolutely. At the very least, I would love it if it could spark some conversations. I know that, I've talked to a few people who are not Black, who were unaware that this wasn't, that this is even an issue. And I know it's not exclusive to the African American community. I know some, I've talked to some people, Latin American people who also have this issue, some Indian people who also have the issue. So if it could spark a conversation for any group that has to contend with this, I think that would be fantastic, because once we're able to start talking about it, then hopefully we can move toward fixing it.
I mean, what do people in book groups or book clubs or in interviews ask you about this? What do they say, or what do your readers say about realizing this sort of hierarchy?
For the people who aren't aware, I think it's pretty eye-opening, because I think they're just unaware of how the effects of slavery, chattel slavery in the US, how deeply and far-reaching the effects are, because that's basically why, colorism exists, in our community. So, anytime that I think someone can be entertained at the same time that they're educated, that's fantastic. It doesn't feel like, you're just learning something or learning some dry bits of information, but if they're entertained at the same time, that's wonderful.
Well, you did hit on something that, I mean, this is endlessly entertaining. Such, Sue Street is saying, an amazing book club book. Yes, absolutely. Perfect book club book. You'll be talking about it for hours and hours. And again, you won't be able to put it down. It is endlessly entertaining. Is it fun? When you finished the book and you knew you were finally finished, how did you know you were finished? And what did you think about that?
I knew I was finished, I think, when I felt like Gemma had reached a point of completion. And it was a fantastic feeling, because I really felt like I went on a journey with her. And like I said, she was very different at the end of the book than she was at the beginning. And I loved seeing that growth. So, but it was a fantastic feeling, just finally being able to type the end.
I mean, I wondered about that. I wondered if writing this book changed you as you were writing it. Gemma changes through the book, but that writerly you can make that happen. But emotional you, how did you evolve through the book? Are you a different person now, not only being a lauded debut author, but knowing that you're offering this gift to other people, the gift of sort of thought-provoking, life-changing fiction? That's not quite fiction.
Yes, I definitely changed. I learned a lot of things, not just, from the research that I did, but I think a lot of things about myself. Anyone, as you know, Hank, anyone who writes a book, it takes a lot of dedication. It takes a lot of work and effort. And just knowing that you're able to do that, I think it shows you, well, if I can do this, there's probably a lot of other things that I can also do.
Yeah, that's so fun to hear that, because I do think, when I'm writing a book, I think there's always this moment where I think I can't do this. I just don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know how I did it before. And I certainly will never be able to do it again. And then something happens and you get an idea and you just go on, and it's incredibly empowering. This Cursed House, I keep wanting to say cursed, it feels very Shakespearean. This Cursed House by Del Sandeen, truly amazing, absolutely riveting. I hope this is a compliment when I say it's a one sitting read. I mean, you just can't put it down.
It is.
Sometimes I think, don't say one sitting read, because it's like, do you know how long it took to write this? Just read it slowly. For goodness sake. Christine is here saying, I can't wait to read this. Susie Baldwin, Katie Crutchfield Wasland is here, and Randy is here, Sue Street. So nice to see all of you. This is fabulous. I know that Chuck in the back room has some questions from our readers. And if you put in a question or a comment, you will be entered to win a copy of this Cursed House by Del Sandeen. Not this one. I am keeping this.
This one.
From that one, the publisher. Anissa is here. That's so nice, Anissa. It is great to see you. If you don't know Del, you two should meet. You would love each other. Anissa says, was there anything that you uncovered during research that was too scary to put in the book?
Hi, Anissa. Thank you for that question. No, I don't think there was anything that was too scary to put in the book. From my research, I think I tried to make things scarier. So no, there was nothing that was too scary.
Nothing too scary for Del Sandeen. I watch those horror movies and I'm like this watching it. I go from the music. When the scary music is over, I know I can look again. Randy, hey Randy from Barnes and Noble. Are you a plotter or a pantser?
Hi, Randy. I am a plotter. I have tried pantsing it before and it's always a disaster. So I've learned.
So how long do you have a big, complicated, lengthy outline, or do you do it as you go, or how does that?
No, I do a rough outline. I'll do chapter by chapter, basically the big thing that I want to happen in each chapter. And then, so there's always surprises because the outline, sometimes it changes, but usually just a little bit. It's just annoying sometimes when I'll put like the big thing. And it's like, well, these two characters had a conversation. So when I come back to that weeks later, I'm just like, is this all I wrote? But no, plotting is still important.
Yeah. And also that the surprises that emerge when characters clash together and the things that people say, make you realize that there's way more to the story than you could ever outline, which is part of the fun. Did you change the end?
No, the ending was always the same. And I think I knew what the last line of the book was going to be well in advance.
Yeah.
So yeah, the ending stayed the same.
Yeah. So I don't know my endings at all, but sometimes I know
really?
Like the last frame of video who be in that picture, sort of hard to say. Okay. Renee, welcome Renee, said also from Florida, says, is Stephen King your favorite author? If not, which authors are?
Hi, Renee. Stephen King is not my top favorite. He is definitely one of the favorites. Other authors that I really love are Toni Morrison, Zadie Smith, Mike Carey or M.R. Carey, Adam Neville, Tana Nareeve Due. So those are among my favorites, but Stephen King is definitely up there.
And Yasmin Ango, who we both know.
Yes, yes.
And love. Katie says, are you doing any tours?
Hi, Katie. I had a book launch event last week when the book published on October 8th. As far as I know, as of now, I don't have any further information about any tours, but if Berkeley wants to send me on any more, I'm more than happy to go.
That's great. Well, we're really honored, especially then, to have you on Crime Time. You have been absolutely fabulous. Let's do one more question, Chuck, and then we'll get to real fun. Is your next book in the pipeline? Can you tell us a little bit about your next story? We'll focus on this Cursed House, I know, but we'll give Randy this question. Are you working on the next?
I am working on the next horror story, and it is horror. And to me, I just describe it as it's more a haunting of Hill House than anything else.
I promise you, I'm a huge fan now, Del, and I promise you I will read it. But I'm going to read it like I did this Cursed House with the lights on. It is absolutely riveting page turner. And as I keep saying, and I want you all to know, a really thought-provoking, life-changing, incredibly researched, gorgeously written book. You need like a fan when it's so hot, the atmosphere in New Orleans. The whole thing is just so whatever. I loved it, Del. Sue Street says, I would love for you to come to the Milwaukee area. That's great. Kathy Lanigan, hey Kathy, says this cursed house sounds so good. Looking forward to reading it. Shannon Hansen says sound you have so, and Renee says Yaz is wonderful. So there's a whole fan club for you here, right at Crime Time.
Thank you.
Reward them quickly by spinning the wheel of fun and seeing who is going to win a copy of this cursed house. This is great. Look, so many people here today, and we'll spin the wheel. We hope maybe we'll get a new winner. I love seeing this. I always think we should have music. Someday we'll have music. And the winner is Randy William Kravitz. Randy, you have won already. You're such a lucky man.
Congratulations, Randy.
Let's do it one more time, Chuck. Let's do it one more time. Can you bring it up to spin again? Because I think Randy won last time or two.
Okay.
Will it spin again? Let's see if it does.
Oh,
I don't mean to take your book from you, Randy, but are you this lucky in real life? I wonder. And the winner is Deborah Frost. Welcome. You know, Deborah a couple times too. Let's do it one more time and see if we can get some. I know I don't mean to do this, but I just sent Deborah a book. So let's see. Draw again. Let's draw again. Thank you, Chuck, in the back room. You're so technically clever. And the winner is Christine. Oh, Betty Fellows. Yay.
Hey.
That's so great. I don't think Betty has ever won.
Okay. Congratulations, Betty.
Here we go, Del. We have a winner. Thank you all for being so incredibly patient about the Wheel of Fun, which loves some of you quite a bit. I don't know if you've put a spell on the wheel, but this curse house will go to our winner, Betty Fellows. Del, thank you for being here today, and congratulations on this great book.
Thank you so much, Hank. I had a marvelous time. Thank you.
Oh, I did too. Thank you. It was fun to tell all of you about This Cursed House by Del Sandeen. If you are not Betty Fellows, run, or click, and get your own copy of this book. As I said, read it with the lights on. And you all, if you do not move in about half an hour, maybe 20 minutes now, come back right here and we will talk to Danielle Trussoni, who wrote a completely different kind of novel, The Puzzle Box, about a super difficult, the most difficult puzzle box in the world. Every single person who has tried to open it has been killed by it. And now our favorite action hero, Mike Brink, the puzzle master of the world, is on his way to Japan to try to open it. It is so good, you all. It is so good. Completely different from Del's book and equally wonderful. So come back in about 15 minutes to hear from Danielle Trussoni, the New York Times bestselling author. The rest of you, if we don't see you, why? Come go get This Cursed House by Del Sandeen. And next week at 4 o'clock, I'm going to keep talking. Next week at 4 o'clock, The Hitchcock Hotel by Stephanie Robel. I mean, need I say more about what this book is about? The Hitchcock Hotel with a bloody bathtub. You know what this is. Just in time for Halloween. Anyway, you all, it's been a joy, absolute joy to see you. Thank you for coming, as always, to Crime Time on a Mighty Blaze. And remember, until next time, it is always safe inside a book. And we'll see you next time.